I don't know. Because I think like the assumption is like maybe like the hope is that all people see is the OpenStack client and they never actually knew about the native things.
Yeah.
So
for new users.
Yeah, but for
the transition, that would be good. Plus, it would track how far you got to go, right? I mean, if you have everything has a populated for both columns, then you're ready to deprecate. If not, you know what you need to fix. So that in the meantime, it would help users to make the transition.
Yeah, we can do it under Cinder. I was just curious if the OpenStack client team itself have anything out there already. It seems like it's going to be a common thing for users transitioning as projects start moving over.
Do we want to make that
Video talks about the desire to run Cinder standalone.
Yeah, and that's the one.
If you want to run a standalone, what it do for a client?
And we have the brick extension for Cinder client right now. So that's one thing I actually want to talk to the OpenStack client team about, if there's any way to still support that, or does that mean that now we can never fully deprecate the Cinder client? Yeah, how that fits in. Because we have already started down that path, and we have the extension that does non-Nova storage management.
I apologize. Can you explain to me like the first part?
Yeah. So Ivan, we now have an extension for Python Cinder client that, because we didn't want it as part of the core client to avoid confusion. But what it mainly is exposing CLI commands that really just utilize the brick library to be able to do things like find devices and
attach. The effort of calling Cinder to do the reserve initialized connection and attach, along with the brick capability of doing the volume discovery, to see that the volume is actually there and provides that back to the user. So as well as detach.
Yeah. So, but it's being consumed through the CLI. It's not being consumed like as just a Python library, or
it's being exposed via a plugin to the Cinder client of the extension that allows two new actions, which is local attach and local detach. So it looks like it's part of the Cinder client when you install it.
Yeah, I got that. But like, whatever project is calling brick, right? How is it calling brick?
The extension is actually calling brick itself. It calls Cinder to get the connection info out of initialized connection, and then manually passes that into the connect volume API in brick itself to do the discovery on the local side.
Library would just call brick like the client. It's like a really thin shim. It creates like the initiator connector and like calls an API, and like a user of brick like Nova or Cinder or plugins. It just also does that.
So give me like a real example of what calls it right now, like a real flow.
I just did.
I'm sorry. Okay. The main reason why I'm asking is because we might not have a problem here, because if whatever is calling Cinder client, which is calling brick, right? Whatever is doing that, if it's being done by like a
user on the CLI is calling Cinder.
Got it.
Local
That's
attach.
the part I want to know. User. Okay. So
Cinder space local attach.
So I was gonna say Cinder client, like itself, like Python Cinder client, that isn't going anywhere. Because
only the CLI.
Okay. So I was just trying to see if we could avoid a problem there.
It's the CLI itself.
CLI.
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
I don't know if you can see this, but we have a repo Python brick Cinder client extension.
Yeah. I just was wanting to know, is it a human that is entering commands, or is it a software that is importing it and calling it through that? That's what I was saying. Okay. So then it kind of sounds like then we could probably get away with just creating I don't know if we would.
What's the policy for extensions to OpenStack client then?
I guess, if we wanted to provide that same
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
capability.
does it have to be an extension? Because it's kind of going to be an essential thing,
yeah.
right?
It goes back to the original argument that we had of, can we just put this capability as part of the CLI for Cinder client itself? And there were objections to that due to confusion because there's a Cinder attach API call in the Cinder client object itself. And so do we
Yeah.
want to confuse that? And
I feel like maybe it's more a naming argument than anything
could
else.
be.
But I think I would argue that this thing is actually essential where it doesn't need to be an extension.
that was my original
Yeah.
vote too.
Okay. Who
With
is somebody present here that didn't like that idea?
I think Duncan didn't like it. John didn't like it.
Let's have another vote.
But yeah, it could come down to the naming. I think, given the interest I've at least heard of people wanting to use Cinder in more scenarios, that might be more of an argument to name it well and name it and include it into the default client.
Yeah.
Part of the decision at the time was, well, we're looking at doing this and see, we can see some use cases where this would be useful, but it's not something that a lot of people are going to need. So let's just put it as an extra extension to the client rather than having it right there where someone could get confused and think they're doing something they're not.
Yep.
Well, in the argument, then you have to have break dependencies in your client.
There was that.
And then you have to install the XSD tools and all that jazz on every box.
Right. Yeah.
That's
Well,
one big burden for not
yeah. And then this ultimately, like looking at the big picture, would become a dependency inside of OpenStack client, right?
Also true.
Yeah.
It's a big packaging problem.
Yeah.
More than a conceptual, you don't want this inside Cinder client. It's like if it's a dependency of Cinder client, now you have to install all this other junk just to do a Cinder shell.
So that might actually be the biggest issue then.
Yeah.
Because that does imply pulling in so much more.
Right.
Is there any other service or other need for extensions in the OpenStack client so that this would be a one-off thing? Does anybody else?
Yeah. I want to talk to that team. I haven't heard myself whether anyone else is doing something like this.
Someone else mentioned the desire to maybe have a new standalone, right? So would it make sense to have this be separate CLI that Cinder maintains outside of
Two Cinder clients?
I mean, if we're saying that it's not something that should be in that client, it's got to be somewhere.
Yeah, it's got to be somewhere, but
So we I see we either keep around Python Cinder client for this, or we get rid
keep
of
around
that.
CLI. It'll be kept around.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
We should be clear about what we're referring to there. So either keeping that CLI around and never deprecating it because there's this other use of it, or yeah, maybe we do deprecate that and we can come out with a whole new library CLI package that is targeted specifically at these users.
Each user's going to want most of the functionality that's already in the client.
That'd be the issue. It'd be duplicating a lot of what's.
I think we should talk with the OpenStack client team to see what their policy is for this kind of special case but highly needed capability.
But I think regardless, though, what Corey brought up, that's going to be a problem.
Sure, I mean, but if it's an extension like we have with the Cinder client extension, then those requirements could go along with that component. So you're not required to have it for OpenStack client volume list, But if you want to do a local attach, then of course you're going to need all the iSCSI utils anyway there. Otherwise, you can't do it regardless.
Is there any testing happening with this extension and making sure all the dependencies fall together?
I think some of the extension dependencies are Ubuntu packages, and there's no testing with respect to that with Patch. So.
So yeah, it seems like right now we just have this big unknown right now, what the OpenStack client team would say.
Yeah.
We could spend the whole time speculating.
Yeah.
But no, that's one of the things on my list. I would want to talk to that team and see what their take is on this type of situation.
Standalone Cinder argument is kind of strong though. Like if people are seriously considering standalone Cinder, they're not going to use OpenStack client.
Yeah.
There's still
Yeah, I would want to avoid the idea that we have two clients. It's just going to create so much confusion. Like, when do I do the Cinder? When do I do the OpenStack?
Yeah.
I could just imagine the hallway conversation.
So maybe talking Swift code, because they do only one, or are they even part of the OpenStack client yet?
Are they part of it?
Yeah.
No, I don't know if they ever will. The goal of the OpenStack client is for, I think Dean Schroeder said it best at the keynote, where nobody should have to know what a Cinder is to do a volume. But it is the idea that you're talking about resources instead, and you're using a consistent set of verbs. So it's a lot more predictable. But things like setting quotas, for example, is like not where you have to go to Nova and then go to Cinder to to change between the different things. You just say OpenStack quota set dash dash vCPUs, and then you can say volumes and gigabytes, and you can just go down the list. Yeah, it's beautiful. I never.
It's really nice, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think the end goal is to deprecate all of the project clients and
Yeah, that's a good point. Why can't we implement this client as logging for the client and make it required?
well, that's what we were talking about earlier, but we don't know what that policy is with the OpenStack client itself. And
Somebody from TC that I got the client team that know one, maybe one, it's called browser, and it should be implemented, not like a client.
that's part of it. Yeah, but Corey brought up a really good point of requiring iSCSI utils and SCSI ID, UDEV tools and stuff like that, which I think is probably a bad thing for OpenStack clients. They don't care about that. You know? Yeah.
There's still optional requirements, right? Like, if you're not going to do a local patch, you don't need those packages.
If you're using multipath, you need SCSI ID.
But if you're not going to do
But
a
if you're not
local
even
patch,
doing
you don't need those packages.
Right.
If you're building a package, you put a dependency on all the things you're gonna.
But they're different, right? You have to like ask it to install these things. They're not like different.
Yeah.
It still has requirements. You're not
Correct.
gonna say, oh, if you happen to want to use the local attach, you can also pip install for me. That's silly. You
No,
just pip install the client.
I'm not talking about tip requirements, Python stuff. This is like business rules on the.
Correct, but, so you can pip install brick and not get iSCSI, like that seems silly. Now brick is gonna have to say, anytime you use brick, you have to manually install the tools.
But how do you think we do? I mean,
It's
my tip
been that
install
way
brick,
for-
I can't use
Brick
it.
doesn't have
Driver,
driver.
driver channel.
There's no pip install for iSCSI utils
There's
and
no,
UDEV,
you just use shell, right? You shell out everything.
PripSep, yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're just there because DevStack installs it, basically,
Well,
right
look
now.
at it, what builds a real package for it, right? It's just a package.
Correct.
Brick is gonna have to-
Yes. iSCSI utils.
So, if I understood correct again, you said that a human is going to go on and type these things in.
Correct. Cinder local attach.
So otherwise, I'd say just create another CLI and never tell a user to ever touch it. Like, if it's a piece of software calling the CLI, but
Yeah, that was also one of John's suggestions originally too, is just to create a separate thing for doing this kind of thing. And I don't know.
is that still a possibility? I mean,
Sure, anything's possible. What seems to make the most sense? I mean,
I don't know if we could get away with just somebody not having, I'm missing a little bit of context, and I think I need to understand that better, but I don't want people to spend time teaching me more. So, but if it's possible for this to, be something that, if we create a separate CLI that has all of its dependencies and so on in those instructions, but people don't have to call it in some way, and they're still interfacing with OpenStack client, I don't know. That's why I asked if it was possible, because I'm missing context. So
yeah.
I don't know what the objectives were, or objections when John was proposing this.
I don't remember the context of the
Okay.
arguments either.
Okay.
Is it technically possible to do 2 clients forever, but only have 1 copy of them? Both share documentation.
Well, Python Cinder client, if it wasn't, if it was just following the OpenStack client plan, that just becomes a library of that functionality. So
Is it that 2 clients going forever?
well, OpenStack client will call the non-CLI part of Python Cinder client. So we could,
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out, is there a way to keep 2 going forever without having to do it to me?
well, yeah. So I'm saying if we take the CLI piece out of Python Cinder client and have something new, most of that functionality still is calling Python Cinder client because that is the library, the client library code.
Once we reach parity with the OpenStack client,
Yes.
we have to get to that point when we're far from it right now. But I think that was the idea, right? Is you reach parity between the 2 CLIs and then you drop the CLI from the project client, right? So at that point, we could drop all but, or I don't know.
Any more thoughts on this issue?
I'm missing some context, so I can't exactly help.
Yeah, I know, I mean, I am too. I know their main goal is to make it easier for a user, so they definitely don't want to give clients.
Yeah.
They want it all, set client, they want that to be intuitive and all that, so, I mean, beyond that, I don't know the specific details.
Okay. Well, I guess since we're not really talking about anything, well, would you like to explain to me and everyone else again patiently on again the user that has to interact with this and why, like this CLI?
So the original idea was to create an easy to use capability for a user that is running on Ironic, right? If you're on Ironic, you don't have the ability to have an agent there that Nova or Cinder can call into it. So the end user knows that I've created the Cinder volume. I want to attach it to my bare metal node, right? So we wanted the ability to have a CLI that says attach this volume, and then it would do all the work. Because we have all the plumbing and tooling in place in OS Brick and Cinder to do the reserve, export, and attach and discovery, right?
Okay, so the user is going to create their volume, whatever, and then they're going to go to their bare metal machine and they're going to talk with the Cinder client to do an attach.
Yeah, Cinder local attach, and then
Got
it
it,
just
okay.
works end to end.
I remember this from, I think, Vancouver, I think it was. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So because normally, so the APIs exist within the Cinder client prior to all this of getting the connection info out of initialized connection, right? So you get this Python dictionary that you then have to, as a user, parse out and then figure out what parts of that to run on ICE as the admin to do the login, discovery login, and then find out where the dev disk by path entries are. Well, that's exactly what Brick does. So this provides you a way of just saying Cinder local attach, and the volume just shows up and you're done.
Yep. Yeah,
And it doesn't matter whether it's fiber channel, EMC scale out.
Yeah, I remember this now. I do.
Sure.
Yeah, that's quite a pickle.
Yeah, so, but the extension is still being worked on. It only supports iSCSI right now, and I'd like it to be fully functional and support everything.
Yeah.
But if this isn't the right direction that we eventually want to go, then we should shift and figure out what is the right thing.
So, am I in a perfect world, I would view it as like you would do that in OpenStack client. I think what is equivalent for attach? It's volume add. I forgot now.
Oh, for a Nova attach.
Yeah, I forgot. But that command would recognize the fact that it's on that you're running this on a bare metal And then
Just
it,
do the
it,
same
it would do
thing.
the same exact thing. But that goes back to the dependency problem and so on. But like, I'm just saying, like, that's what I would want, I think.
So the CLI for the end user is exactly the same.
It's exactly the same interface.
Except I think in that API, you have to provide the instance ID as well as the volume ID, right?
Yeah.
The end user, as they're on the ironic instance, may not know that. I don't know.
Just say local host instead of instance ID.
Say that again?
Instead of,
Oh, dash local or something?
I think it doesn't mean, in the chat,
Oh, I see.
or just change the position
Okay.
Um,
Yeah. Okay.
We could, yeah, again, we need to talk to OpenStack client team and
Yeah.
find out what is.
Yeah. I just wanted us to like at least find an agreement that maybe we could use that existing interface, like if we went down that path. We still have the dependency problem, but
Yeah. Actually, for end users, that would be fantastic because it would just be the same.
okay. But
Semantic.
when we're talking about the dependency problem, it's still just well, this code would probably live in OpenStack client, right? So ideally, we wouldn't make it an extension anymore, right? And then, but we would still have to require, just like today, that you have to apt-get, install, or whatever,
Yeah.
these packages. So,
If they're there and they're not through, like, you don't have to have a whole, you're not there, you can, it says, hey, you need something.
yeah, I was just establishing that it's actually no different, right? So get rid of the brick extension, put that inside of OpenStack client, and then add in that workflow for doing the local attach. We can like shed on how exactly we'll want the arguments and what makes sense. But getting approval from the OpenStack client on this idea, and then go ahead and our instructions is install OpenStack client, and then you apt-get these packages.
So I,
Requires the default role of the second line dependencies. So because if we would like use local attach, if the line I want to install north line, old line, last line. Okay. Not very good for
I guess I would argue that it's immediate fine if we say, okay, so if you want to do manual patches, use OpenStack. If you want to do local patches, you have to use first patch. I mean, that's the thing we're trying to avoid here. I know like OpenStack client like just wants to install all the things, but
we can use this line as a standalone code. Now, if the line is also provide us also allow my customers to use local attach, right? I don't want to allow them to use local client or plus client.
why wouldn't they install OpenStack client in a bare metal node? What's the resistance to that?
oh, the point he was making was the fact that OpenStack client has like a huge dependency because it's doing all the clients, right? So it has all the libraries that it has to install.
Right.
So
But
as-
if you
as-
install OpenStack client, those come for free, right? Because of
Well,
the
yeah,
precedent.
they come for free as opposed to the Cinder client where you just get its dependencies. You don't get Nova client and whatever else that's supported by OpenStack client.
so if you only care about that
The attached
local
part of it.
attach functionality,
Then you
you're
don't need
pulling
to
in all
keep
the
the
NOAA,
client.
Yeah,
everything.
it's tricky
guess.
though, right? Because I brought up earlier, like when you are interacting with, say, the quota resources, you kind of need all of
All
those
of
things.
those,
Yeah. So it's much better to just get them all.
But from inside your bare metal.
Yeah, you're
you
right.
don't care about
Yeah.
Sure,
All you care about is I want my volume.
Yeah.
So you don't want just brick. You probably also want Cinder client, you probably want to create a volume as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
understood.
Yeah.
as it is now.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of it depends on the future of all this. Is it just
Where-
something to help Ironic through this, or is it something like?
I think it's a valuable thing to help Ironic in this case, for sure.
That's why I mean, is it going to grow to be something that we envision people will use to manage volumes? Just
I see this for all types. I could see this for containers later and yeah.
case, it's gonna live forever as a separate client. There's no sense in having all that other
Wait,
stack stuff.
What do you mean a separate client?
Well, Cinder client, a separate Cinder client. In other words, if you have this thing to manage container attachments or whatever, and you want to do all this without OpenStack, just using Cinder as the.
No, what I was proposing was you use the OpenStack client. The Cinder client will still exist as a library. The CLI part is what goes away.
What I'm saying is if this is sort of a branching of the use of Cinder, in other words, some people might want to use Cinder to manage their storage and not have OpenStack. This been proposed, John's big on this. People might do this to manage attach storage to containers. You can use it for the ironic case. If that continues to grow to a
I
thing,
think,
then you will need a client to manage things.
okay.
Attaching storage to containers is a container-specific capability, not something that you can
That's
just
probably
run.
something you would write your own client.
You have to add a plugin to Docker to do that attachment.
I'm not sure
That's
that use
different.
case fits. I'm just wondering, this is John's always posted this every Sunday. Should Cinder be just a software-defined storage thing that?
Yeah.
I think there's value to that. I think there's.
Do you need a client that does that doesn't pull in a bunch of Nova and links?
And I think because of that, you still need to have some CLI and Cinder to still stay around.
In that case.
But I think
yes.
Mike is also correct in the fact that as an OpenStack core project that we want to have that capability, it makes a lot of sense for the OpenStack client to have this as well.
Okay, so I think
So-
you should just present the idea to OpenStack client. I want an extension to OpenStack client. Let me
Yes.
have it so I can have access to the
Yeah.
Ask to find out.
Yeah.
Don't
So-
have ideological reasons why not, but that's too bad. I mean, they actually need this functionality.
They do. And one thing that I could add to Brick is an upfront check to see if the packages and programs are available to allow you to even do this. And because it's something that we don't do now.
Tricky too, though.
I can see if
Say I
they're
have Fiber
there.
Channel, I don't care if the iSCSI.
Right now, the connector collection part, it tries to do that, and if it doesn't have HBAs, you don't get exceptions. It just says, hey, you don't have any HBAs and you don't have any worldwide names, and so you can't do FC. But we don't do that for iSCSI stuff. We actually throw errors, I believe.
So I missed why we went back to say an extension again, like proposing that.
Because of the dependencies.
So I'm glad you're here now, because you've been probably the most vocal detractor from moving to OpenStack client. So you have concerns with the naming and. Okay.
So I'm confused by the part you said that when the user just wants to use Cinder, that was what you said. Why do they need to know about Cinder? That's the whole reason why we're having this discussion right now. Why can't they just say, I want to attach this volume locally?
Because that's a standalone Cinder. That's not OpenStack. We have Cinder, we don't have OpenStack. This Cinder is a standalone.
Oh, for the standalone Cinder case? Okay.
That's the
Okay.
standalone Cinder client.
I'd rather those things just, I mean, yeah, that could be a completely separate thing. I mean, like,
Yeah.
any community of
Yeah.
people can form that if they want, but like, totally fine with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
They have to do both.
You always
Then we're gonna be back to the problem where we're gonna always have a matrix of like, it's this feature supporting this one and this one. It's gonna be a mess. Yeah, that's why I would say, like, if a community of people, if there's an interest of core people here that want to do this, then sure, they could do that. But I would say, like, from the Cinder team's perspective, like, we should be recommending the OpenStack guy. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to be vocal about this other client that might be out of date or something, right?
Then we have to set that you can do this to the OpenStack client, but you can't do this.
That's-
It gets even more confusing.
Well, that's what I'm saying, like, I don't want, I'm saying, like, if we take this stance where we want both, right? Right, but that's what I'm saying, though, is like, the only part that we should be vocal about is the OpenStack client. Yeah, there's a community of people who have created a client, just like today, where people could create a client and it could be terribly out of date right now, right? That exists, but it's not first class citizen. Yeah, so I'm fine with that, yeah, just, we should be recommending one or the other. So.
If you have OpenStack, you want the OpenStack client, and it should make work email routing, which has special cases.
Yeah.
That can be solved, but if someone that doesn't even have OpenStack, don't say OpenStack client, that's.
Right.
Cinder client.
Right, so us as a,
Oh,
nobody is saying that right now,
Yeah.
though, Duncan.
Well, they do say we should go with more backup. We may have a future of that too, won't we?
correct.
Yes, you are,
That's what we're working.
nobody,
Correct.
and
You're
nobody's
absolutely
disagreeing
correct.
with you on that. That's
Yeah.
exactly what we have established earlier, that is the future. Yes.
Until they're parity,
Totally.
then there's really no argument to be made for ripping anything out of
Yeah.
Cinder client
Yep.
at all. There just
Love you
isn't.
there. Yep.
We always got to argue about stuff we agree on.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
right?
I know.
All right, so I think the action item here is we need to coordinate with the OpenStack
Yes.
client team and find out what we can or can't do there. Inform them of what we would like to see from an end user's perspective. How we get to that point may be a different path than we thought, but I can add some checks into Brick to validate that certain things are installed. And this kind of goes along the lines of what we were talking about yesterday with respect to discovering what you have the ability to do on the particular host you're running on, whether it supports fiber channel, iSCSI, RBD, NFS, all that stuff.
That's right, yeah.
So this is kind of the same thing, and that will help.
If no one else wants to do it, I could take an action item and talk to Dean. He's a pleasant person.
Okay.
Anybody want to do it otherwise?
I mean, we have been kind of, with, in page, so, you guys are,
Okay, if you want to talk to Dean for it, then that's cool too.
We've already started discussion.
yes, we.
About local attach?
Not specifically.
Okay,
but,
yeah, that's
also-
the
but
topic.
the thing that is-
Yep.
Right.
So,
So there's the parity discussion, right, which we need to have and get that done. But I think this one is kind of a special case, separate thing that is, could have pitfalls and that we need to iron out.
Yeah, we'll take charge and we'll talk to whoever else.
Okay,
You
cool.
guys.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah.
When is that?
I think it's sometime today, do something
Okay.
with the OpenStack client. So I'm sure he'll do that, and then I know tomorrow's like a meetup, OpenStack client, so.
Correct.
Yeah.
Two windows.
Okay. All right, we're at time for this session. Let's take, next is kind of an open, I put it in as a non-conference. I know we've got plenty of topics that we've kind of put on the list to circle back on. So we can start talking about some of those, but if anyone else has any topics that weren't discussed yet, we can also bring those up, assuming we have some time. But let's take a little break and come back in 10 minutes.